Tonight we are in the 14th book of Israel, part 1, and we shall be starting chapter 6. This is found on page 62. The title of the sermon is, "In the days of this messenger, all the secrets of Yahweh will be revealed." All the secrets of Yahweh will be revealed. Let's look at Deuteronomy 29:29, just to start things off with. I know most of you know the scripture, Deuteronomy 29, verse 29. And it says, this is on page 172 in the book of Yahweh, it says, "The secret things belong to Yahweh our Father, but the things revealed to us, every word that proceeds from Yahweh's mouth, belongs to us and to our children forever, so that we may perform and do all the words of this law." You know, Yahweh has given us the one sent who is revealing these secret things, these prophecies, bringing it to us. And that has been prophesied to take place in this time period. So we are a very blessed generation at this time, being in the house of Yahweh, being called out, having our minds open, and of course receiving this knowledge and understanding. So let's start at verse 5. And Pastor said, I've got something here I got to go over before I start the sermon. And he said, I didn't bring it with me. Yes, I did bring it with me. And it's one of those press releases, and it says, "A lack of understanding the Bible is what's contributing to today's woes," says Yisrayl Hawkins. And when you look at as many religions that they have, especially the Christian religions, you know, how many of them really understand the scriptures? You know, how many of them really understand what the Bible teaches? How many of them really have a thorough understanding of the scriptures? You know, you get bits and pieces here, and of course, you know, you have the movies that are made by Hollywood that distorts everything. You know, just recently I had the opportunity just to see like a minute of something pertaining to the Bible on the History Channel. You know, and it was one of those Hollywood productions. So Jesus had his long hair, and he was talking to his disciples. He was talking to Thomas, and you know, he was showing him the hole in his hand, and the light was shining through the hole, and everything like that. You know, and you know, the whole thing is just so far from reality. You know, and the thing about it is, when you look at, if you're a Christian looking at those movies, you would think that's the way the Bible is. Not really realizing that that is just an exaggerated, glossy type thing just to keep your attention. But the reality of the scriptures is like our daily lives today. It's really like our daily lives today. It's a day-by-day thing that the men and women of old lived. You know, it wasn't a glamorized Hollywood-type production. It was a day-by-day living, dealing with tests, trials, you know, things that everyone has to deal with on a day-by-day basis. These are the things that they go through. So you have to have that understanding in order to really understand what the Bible really teaches. Just to know that these were regular people living daily lives, dealing with things that comes up on a day-by-day basis. You know, I was thinking, and I was discussing this with another priest, you know, we have things that frustrates us in daily life. You know, the car may break down, or something might go wrong in the well house and you have no water, or, you know, some rodent might chew on an electrical wire and short out part of your house, or, you know, something like that. And then you would think, well, how blessed are the days without electricity and without running water and etc. And I was thinking, I wonder what would have frustrated the people of old. Maybe their wheel got stuck somewhere, the donkey didn't want to go, you know. And I'm sure they had frustrations. It wasn't just all, you know, like just this beautiful life that they were leading without the modern conveniences. I'm sure they'll be able to share with us some of the things that, you know, made their daily lives a struggle. We have our daily struggles, but I'm sure they also had their daily struggles that was peculiar to their generation. But it's a lack of understanding. A lack of understanding the Bible is what's contributing to today's woe, says Yisrayl Hawkins. Let's move on to, and he's showing that this is really getting out there, because he said 80,000 news medias ran this thing, and he said it's actually 79,824 news medias throughout the United States that picked up this article. And if you look at another one here, he said this one out this week is a Peaceful Solution Character Education Incorporated announces Spring 2014 Educational Convention. And that's up about 50,000 news medias running that today. And that's our work. The House of Yahweh is reaching out to the world as Yahweh said we would. And this is really amazing, and I know it's common to us now, but really, this is the only work of Yahweh that has been capable of reaching the world with a small group of people that we have. Just imagine if we had to go door to door and reach every single person in the world that way. This congregation will have to be like 10,000 times the size that it is if we had to really make a door-to-door effort and really cover the entire world and make sure we go everywhere. But with the internet, with the satellite, with the various type of broadcasting, it makes it a whole lot easier. So you could have a small group of people that could really cover the entire world. And that's the blessing of the work in these last days. And that's what the prophecy says, that the work would reach out to the entire world. And he said it's going live right now to the entire world, just as tonight's class is going live to the entire world. All those who tune in to Yahweh.com and they switch in, this is going out to the entire world. You could wave to them if you were on the camera. In fact, they can see you. Well, I think they can see me too, but I can't see them. I can't see them. Now, in verse 8, he says he's talking about the suicides that is taking place in today's world. And he says, now they're extremely high at this time. And I think this year already we have been around 1,400, I think, or more of businessmen. Now, he said these are businessmen committing suicide. Now, if you can imagine the business world, this is the school of higher learning. The schools of higher learning, and these are the ones who have committed suicide already this year. I forgot how many a day, but it's extreme, and that's what's taking place here. And he mentioned the suicide later on in the sermon, so I was just looking up some suicide facts and figures, and this is from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And this is the basic facts. And it says an American dies by suicide every 12.95 minutes. So if you just think about that, every 13 minutes someone is killing themselves by suicide. Americans attempt suicide an estimated 1 million times annually. Now that's a huge number. It says 90% of those who die by suicide had a diagnosable psychiatric. Let's see if I can get this back here. So they had a diagnosable psychiatric disorder at the time of their death. So it's a tremendous amount of people who are killing themselves. And it says in 2012, firearms were the most common method of death by suicide, accounting for 50.9% of all suicide deaths, followed by various other suffocation, hanging, poisoning, and so forth. But that's definitely a lot of people that are being killed. They said over 40,000 Americans, and this is on this side of the page here, but it says over 40,000 Americans die by suicide every year, And suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. So you can see there's a lot of people who are killing themselves because of what they're experiencing and what they're going through. And as we get further on, you'll see one of the reasons many people take their own lives because they have no answers for their problems, and the religions that they follow have no answers for their problems. And of course, that's why you see the death and the killing and the shooting and the mass murders as the one that has taken place this week. All of it is a result of not having the answers. But let's look at verse 9. Now he says, now when you think of this at the bottom of verse 9, or not at the bottom of verse 9, but in verse 9, in the left column, he says, now when you think of this, of course, you need to think of 1 Samuel 7 and 8, and Yahweh shows there how he is going to protect you, his work. He shows this in no uncertain terms, and through the leader, through the one sent, who was Samuel, the great prophet of Yahweh, Samuel at that time. And Samuel said, yes, if you will put away your gods. That should bring you to Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. So that's part of the protection. The protection of Yahweh comes through obedience to Yahweh. And that was one of the first instructions that the prophet Samuel gave to the people, that if they wanted Yahweh's protection, they needed to put away the gods. They need to get the gods away from them if they want Yahweh to protect them. This is the same message that is coming forth from the house of Yahweh in these last days. Anyone who wants to serve Yahweh have to put away the gods, because you can't serve Yahweh and serve God at the same time. It just don't work. You have to put away the God worship. He says that should automatically click it in your head. Click it in your head. Satan says, here, accept a little sin and you'll be like the gods. Well, Samuel said, Yahweh is not going to protect you if you do this. And this is something, again, that we have to have to the forefront of our minds, that just a little sin is enough to cut us off from Yahweh. As Isaiah 59 verse 1 and 2 tells us, sin cut us off from Yahweh. And remember what verse 2 says. Well, let's read it, because I was thinking about a situation this week, and this scripture came to mind, Isaiah chapter 59 verse 1 and 2, where it says, behold, Yahweh's hand is not shortened that it cannot save, nor is air heavy that it cannot hear. Now, when we are dealing with certain problems and certain situations, and we are having difficulty living Yahweh's way, and we are having struggles, and we are fighting against this, and we are fighting against that, and etc., we should think about this scripture, Isaiah chapter 59, verse 1 and 2, because Yahweh's hand is not shortened that it cannot save. We know that Yahweh has all the power in the universe, so he is capable of taking care of any problem that we may be experiencing. Nor his ear heavy that it cannot hear, meaning that, yes, we can pray to Yahweh and he will hear our prayers. But notice verse 2, we have to always remember this. But your own iniquities have separated you from your Father, and your own sins have caused him to hide his face from you, so he will not listen. So we always have to examine ourselves and make sure that, no, we are not participating in even the smallest of sin, because that will cut us off from Yahweh. That will cut us off from the power of Yahweh, from Yahweh's hand. That will cut us off from Yahweh's ear, where he will not hear us. So that will cut us off from the only one who could help us in whatever we may be going through, or whatever situation that we may be facing. So it's very, very important that, no, we don't accept a little sin like Satan brought forward and say, be like the gods. Well, Samuel said, Yahweh is not going to protect you if you do this. You let this little bit of evil come in, and you cut yourself off from Yahweh. So Samuel said, put these gods away from you, and yes, Yahweh will do his job. That's the promise. That's the promise. Put away the gods, and Yahweh will do his job. That's the promise that we have from Yahweh. Praise Yahweh. But it's really important that we keep this in mind. This is the same thing that was said in Isaiah 59 by the great prophet Isaiah. It was said by other prophets too, but in other words. Let's look at verse 11. In today's time, what does he call this place? The protected place. The protected place, meaning Yahweh is going to protect this place, and you're dealing with Yahweh if you think you're going to destroy it. Well, that's to all the enemies out there, all the gods and all the demons and all those who practice witchcraft and necromancy and consult mediums and spirits and etc. They think they could come up against Yahweh, but no. Yahweh said he's going to protect this place and he's going to protect his people, the ones who are faithful to him. This is a promise from Yahweh. Pastor says, do I worry? No. I put my trust in Yahweh completely. Praise Yahweh. And I told him this years ago. I can't fight Satan. I don't intend to. I don't want to fight anymore in my life. I don't want to ever fight again. I want to do your will. I want to teach your ways, but you take care of the work. And of course, that's what he shows in the Holy Scriptures, and that's what he is going to do for you if you don't accept this evil along with the righteousness. We have to reject the evil. Remember, that's part of the reverence of Yahweh. Let's go to verse 15. Pastor says, I was talking to some people this week about farmers and about becoming a priest. And I said, you're not here to learn how to work. You're not here to learn how to work to learn. Let me reread this again. You're not here to learn how to work to learn a profession in a butcher shop, in the garden, in the chicken house. But you're here to learn how to teach what goes on in a butcher shop. That is a kosher butcher shop. In a kosher chicken house, we have kosher chicken houses in a kosher kitchen without commercial fertilizers. So what this should place in our minds is that we are here to learn how to do things properly so that we could guide others in doing it. So we could guide others in being able to take care of themselves, because Pastor is referring to the very basics of living here, which is coming back down to the food that we eat and so forth. And we should be able to guide others in taking care of themselves and what's the proper thing to do, what's the proper things to look for and so forth, so that they don't poison themselves, so that they don't defile themselves, so that they don't bring confusions into their minds and so forth. Let's go to verse 17. He says, but I said, we're here to learn every aspect of life. We're here to learn every aspect of life. And the Scriptures covers everything. There's nothing that is left uncovered by the Scriptures. I often wonder why Yahweh put me behind a donkey, a mule, pulling a plow. Well, I could teach that right now easily. I could teach people how to ride horses. I could teach people how to make harnesses to pull wagons. I could teach people how to build a wagon. I never got into blacksmithing, but I saw it done, and I think I could teach people how to make a rim that goes on a wagon wheel. I've got a bit of it all. Yahweh has given me bits and pieces of knowledge, not because he wanted me in the profession of blacksmithing or building wagons, but because he wanted me to be able to teach. And of course, as he brought this Oki on up, he brought him to a certain point, seeing today's world, living in today's world, learning how it operates, so I could teach others not to make the mistakes that I made coming through life. And this is, this is part of our responsibility in the House of Yahweh, is to teach others not to make the same mistakes that we made. To turn them away from error, to guide them away from falling into the same pits and the same traps that we fell into, so that they don't have to suffer the same things that we did. He says in verse 19, I know one thing, and I've heard it said, I don't know how many thousand times, or if I had only known if someone had have just told me this, why on earth didn't my parents tell me this? Well, it's still being said. Of course, this is usually when a person becomes, more mature in life, then they realize that certain knowledge could have saved them a lot of time, a lot of misery, a lot of heartache, and so forth when they come to that understanding. But in the house of Yahweh, that counsel is given freely to guide each and every one of us away from sin, but also to live successful, righteous lives. And the emphasis being on righteousness, living successful, righteous lives. Now let's continue on here in, some of the things that Pastor showed here is, let's go to verse 22. And at the end of verse 21, it talks about young children, that these young children are trying to figure out what's causing all these young children to take overdoses and killing themselves. And that was, we didn't read that particular statistic, but it says that suicide is the second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 24 years old. 10 to 24. Suicide is the second leading cause of death, and it's the fifth leading cause of death for ages 45 to 59. So it goes on both ends of the spectrum. But you are talking about here, the overdoses, that what is causing, they were trying to figure out what's causing these young children to take overdoses and killing themselves. And some of the businessmen are doing the same thing. Some that have guns, one man said, "I stood and watched my friend. I was close as I am to you. He put a gun under his chin, pulled the trigger." Other businessmen are jumping out windows of their offices to stop the pain inside their head. The fear inside their heads that they're facing in today's world, saying to the rocks and mountains, "Give us some protection." Well, of course, there are rocks and there are mountains, the main one being the Pope, the Roman Catholic Church. They have no answers. The churches don't have any answers for the problems that are going on. As we could see with the latest mass killing where 14 people were killed and I think 18 were injured, they have no answers for it. And I believe this year alone there has been more mass killings than days of the year has passed already. So there has been a mass killing, one every day, one for every day of the year that has taken place. A lot of them doesn't garner public attention, but it's really something else that is going on. So the people are calling for answers. They're holding prayer vigils, and they're going to their churches, and candles are being lit across the nation and so forth. But that still doesn't give an answer to the problem. We know what the answer is. Part of the answer, again, is what Samuel told the people. Put away the gods. Get rid of those Christmas trees. They're worthless. They are vain. That's where you should start off with. Throw those trees in the backyard, put them in the fireplace and burn them if it's a real tree. Just get rid of it. Send the gifts back. You don't want it anymore. These are the changes that people will have to make if they really want to get the protection that comes forth from Yahweh. They'll have to put away the gods. But the Catholic Church, this is what they're turning to, and their people in the Catholic Church are diminishing. They're getting desperate, so they're wanting to apply force now to maintain their force, their way of force. That's Nimrod, which means rebellion. So if the people are leaving and you don't want them to leave, well, then you'll have to forcibly hold them in place. And that's what the Catholic Church is bringing about. They want to forcibly hold on to the people or have them do their will. So they're wanting to resurrect this Roman Empire to once again force people under the rulership of the Catholic Church. The people don't want this anymore. Their people are turning. They're losing members, so they're trying to save themselves. They're trying to save their system, and they're looking in advance what is going to be like a couple decades from now, and they know that it's dwindling, so they know that their power is dwindling too. That's why today's Pope, he accepts all type of sin. And he lets the people know that the Catholic Church is universal once it comes to sin. You could be practicing any type of sin and you're welcome to the Catholic Church, and you don't have to change a thing. You don't have to change nothing. because Jesus will take you just as you are. You don't have to change a thing, but that's not salvation. That's what's causing the problem, a lack of people turning away from their sins and people turning to Yahweh. But they're losing, and this is what they're seeing, and this is what this Pope is trying to turn around here, and that's why he's so outgoing and people-friendly and out there kissing the babies and driving a small car and gets his own newspaper and call people on the phone, and all this stuff it's really just public relations. And if you have been following, you would know that with Benedict, they realized, Pope Benedict that is, they realized that they were in bad shape, and he wasn't really doing well as a public face of the church. So they needed somebody else in there. So instead of waiting for him to die, which could take, he's still alive, so you could see the predicament he would have been in if they were waiting for him to die. It was like, okay, well, you just step aside, you just step down, let's bring in somebody else who could put a new face on the Catholic Church and try and turn these things around. And it's like, well, what about all the problem with the child molesting and all the financial scandals? And that was under Benedict watch. He's here no more. We have a new face, we have a new management team, so those problems don't exist. But guess what? The problems are still there. The problems are still there. They still have the same exact problems that they did before Benedict, took the back seat, so to speak. Let's look at verse 26. Pastor says because he's talking about the memory span, the short memory span, and he's talking about the computer here. He says, but what is wrong? What we are facing today is the short memory span where people, they come and see and they hear like you're doing now, but they quickly forget, being trained with the computers of the world. This is another training session that takes you into whoredom, the 666, that computer, the word computer. Yes, I was horrified when I saw that and I brought it out in the mark of the beast, but it's a necessary thing to reach the world with today. And Yahweh chose their own system that they invented for us to reach out to their people. Praise Yahweh. And show that these things can be used for righteous purposes. And of course, that's what we are set up here for, to do in the House of Yahweh. We have been training, working at it for years, and we are streaming live right now to all the world. They can see this program right now taking place. And remember that, brothers, that the technology of today, we have to use it for righteous purposes. And if you cannot use it for righteous purposes, it will be better to do without it and still enter in the kingdom than to allow the gods into your life and burn with these technology. It will be better to enter in the kingdom without it, not having to do with it, as opposed to holding on to it and allowing sin to continually plague your life. That's the choice that Samuel set before the people. If you want Yahweh's protection, get rid of the gods. Get rid of the gods. Let's look at verse 30. Well, of course, you see these things taking place. You see people committing suicide. They're helpless. They're without an answer. And Yahweh showed this to Samuel. He showed us at the same time, you can't go without Yahweh. You may think you are powerful and almighty, and you may think that you're smarter than all the priests put together. I've seen people that have said that. I've heard it said. I've heard it come from the mouth. I'm smarter than all the priests put together. And wound up showing how goofy they were, how stupid they were in leaving the only place of salvation. Well, Yahweh wants us to know that we are going to need Him. We are forever going to need Him. This being is, I say, trillions of years, just to give you a number, but it's limitless ahead of us. Light years away. And I don't have the time to really even expound on that, how far ahead Yahweh is in terms of us, where we start, and how far ahead Yahweh is. It's really mind-boggling. Put the biggest number you can. You couldn't exaggerate it enough. He's ahead of us, but He is our Father, and He's willing to guide us and teach us and protect us all at the same time. No one can outdo Him. No one can outthink Him. You think you got a scheme to destroy the house? Yahweh knew this. He knew you were going to have that scheme before you ever came here, and he made provisions to protect his work from you. Brothers, Yahweh is so far ahead, but he's going to guide us for all eternity, and that's such a tremendous blessing and privilege. So may Yahweh bless your understanding. I'll ask for everyone to please stand, and I'll have the honor and privilege to turn the class over to the great Kohan Koheleth. Praise Yahweh.
Shabbat Shalom, man. You may be seated. We're going to pick up where the great Kohan Levi left off at, but before I get started here, I would like to reread this title. And the title of this sermon is, in the days of this messenger, all the secrets of Yahweh will be revealed. Okay, in the days of this messenger. Okay, and so one of the things that we're going to see throughout the rest of this sermon is how pastor's trying to continue to prove to us, who he is. Okay, who he is and who Yahweh is. And so he's going to continually refer to himself as this man, showing that in this time period, this man, certain things have to be done. And when I was thinking about this, how pastors, continually proving to us who he is, we kind of do the same things when we want a job, right? When you're going, who here has ever filled out like a job application? Yeah. Okay. And so when you fill out the job application, you're trying to sell yourself, right? Like, I'm going to put down all of the best things about myself. I'm not going to put down anything negative because I want this job. Then when you get to towards the end of it, it says list some references, right? List references, because they're going to call and check up on you to find out if you are who you say you are. And that's what they're going to do. And they're going to call and say, hey, so-and-so used to work there. How was he as an employee? And they're going to explain to whoever's requesting that information. They're going to tell them about you. Okay? Now, I'm saying that because, pastor's proving to us who he is, but people don't believe. People don't believe who he is. So if you want to do a background check on pastor, search the scriptures. Okay? Search the scriptures. Okay? Pastor has a reference, and that reference is Yahweh. Okay? Yahweh inspired the prophets. Yahweh inspired Yeshua to speak about this man, so that we can know exactly who he is and to trust the information that he's giving us. Okay, but it's hard to believe for a lot of people because of the deception that's in the world today, all of the lying preachers, these religious imposters. Okay, so for thousands of years, the lies have been going on. And so when people come to the house, I don't know, what he says makes sense, but I just don't trust people. It's hard to trust preachers. It's hard to trust people who talk about the scriptures. But Yahweh speaks on this man's behalf. And that's what we have to put our trust in. Yahweh says, believe into the one sent. Okay, so let's continue on here. Let's look at verse 38. It says, but what Yahweh trains you in is important. And I tell our young priests, something that the world doesn't know. And you're the only ones who can teach it right now. And right now you are very important. Okay, what is pastor teaching us? What is he training us in? Okay, the laws of Yahweh, how to develop this positive character, this character that Yahweh himself possesses so that we can be blessings to other people, so that we can actually be a blessing to all of creation. Let's look back at verse 35. It says, if you have been trained as an okie on a farm, you would be able to make hens lay eggs and cows give milk and separate the cream. You would be able to show people how to survive. Okay, you'll be able to show them how to live. Okay, what are they doing now? The great Kahan was just mentioning, the technology and the different things that people are doing, but they're changing the food supply. Okay, they're changing the food supply, making it to the point where it's killing people. Okay, it's killing us. But Yahweh shows us how to do things correctly so that we can survive, so that we can not just have life, but so that we can have life in abundance. Okay, life in abundance. Continuing on, it says, if you are raised on a computer, can you eat a computer? No. Then he mentions other jobs here, like electricians and so on and so forth. Says, can you eat those things? Okay. Not that those things aren't important, but he's trying to show us, not to seek after the things of this world, the riches of this world, but become trained in this knowledge here so that we can become priests in Yahweh's kingdom, his eternal kingdom. Okay. We're going to always need things, but if our minds are set on the things of this world, then we're going to forsake Yahweh. Okay, we're not going to focus on coming to class and training and becoming teachers of righteousness. here at the bottom of that verse here, the bottom of verse 35, it says, so which is the most important? And he says, guarding and keeping the garden growing. Okay? Guarding and keeping the garden growing. And that's, like Pastor say, there's a bunch of sermons in that right there. Okay? Physically and spiritually, we have to guard and keep the garden growing. In verse 36, I'm telling you, Yahweh wants you to learn these things to be a priest. Okay? He wants you to learn these things to be a priest. That's why we're here. Let's jump on over to verse. I'm going to paraphrase some of these here. In verse 39, Pastor starts mentioning about the Pope and the President and how important these men are in the world. Okay? And here it says that these are very important men, and they're bringing out very important jobs, both of them, but jobs that are going to end. Okay? They're going to end. Why are they going to end? Pastor goes on and says because these are jobs that are based on this governmental system of the people and by the people, which is going to come to an end. Okay, and then these kingdoms they're going to be given over to the saints of Yahweh. Okay, under a new administration, an administration of eternal righteousness, where people aren't going to have to work 90 hours a week. You know, we were just talking about this the other day. You work 40 hours a week just to pay for a loaf of bread and a dozen eggs. You know, that's how expensive things are getting. You know, you work 40 hours just for the staples, just for the basics. Okay, but under Yahweh's administration, you know, it's going to be so much that Yahweh says you wouldn't even know where to put these things. You know, your storehouses are going to overflow. You know, all of these things what are you going to do with it? You know, you'll be able to make sure that everyone's needs are met. We're training to be overseers of Yahweh's administration, over Yahweh's government, making sure that everyone has food to eat, places to stay, and so on and so forth. You know, living in unity and in righteousness. But continuing on here, it says that that these jobs are going to end. Oh, and I wanted to mention in the kingdom of Yahweh, Yeshua said what? He said that in my Father's house there are many what? Which means, okay, and another word for offices is jobs. Jobs that will not end, right? Because that's what we see here. These jobs that we see in this time period, you know, from man, these jobs are going to end, but these offices, these eternal positions are jobs that we're going to have forever. And this is what Pastor wants us to understand. If we qualify ourselves, okay, if we make right choices, we can have these eternal positions of righteousness. Let's look over to page 68. Okay, 68. And at the very top of verse 42, it says, this is in our time period. You know, and again, Pastor's talking about, you know, the role of the president, the role of the Pope, and how the Pope is influencing and how the popes have influenced the leaders of the world. Okay, and our president is no different than any other president. They have to follow the instructions or they just won't be there. Okay, they won't be there. And I remember right when Bush, I think it was either at the end of his administration or it was after he wasn't president anymore, but he was on a radio show. And he said, well, I don't care who sits in the seat that I sat in. When they get the information that I got, they're going to do the same things that I did. You know, and he was talking about the ones who were campaigning. No, he was still president because he was talking about the ones that were campaigning. And he says, it doesn't matter what they say. Okay, they'll tell you this and that, but when they get this information, they're going to do the same thing. Now, to the average person, they would think that, you know, well, he has privileged information about certain things that's going on in the world. But to the mind that has understanding, the mind that's given to us by Yahweh, we know that these are specific instructions on what these men need to do in order to bring about certain events in the world. Okay, we know and we understand that. So it's not about, you know, these men saying, well, we're going to make our decisions based on world events. No, they're given instructions on what to do so that certain things can take place. And if we don't believe that, then we don't believe what's in the scriptures, because the scriptures show us that the Pope has an army that stands on his part, that the Pope, that great city, reigns over the kings of the earth. And all of these world leaders get with the Pope, right? And does what the Pope says. If that wasn't true, then how was it that the Berlin Wall came down after what? Was it a 20-minute speech? The Berlin Wall came down after 20 minutes, after it had been there for years? Okay. And look at verse 43. Let's read all of 43. It says, would you say right now that peace has been taken from the earth? Have you seen all the wars that are going on, the upheavals, the arguments? Have you seen from what I've told you, in your mind's eye at least, people committing suicide, even the soldiers committing suicide, businessmen? These are the upper-class citizens committing suicide. I didn't just tell you that as news. Okay, now get what Pastor's saying here. He says, I didn't just tell you that as news. He said, I tell you this because this is what the world is seeing right now. Prophecy fulfilled. Peace has been taken from the earth. So once again, he's showing us that exactly what Yahweh said is going to take place is taking place. Okay, proving to us once again that Yahweh knows what's going on. He's in complete control, and he's giving us this information beforehand, telling us what to look for so that we can diligently look for it. Okay, so that we're not blind, so that we can know the day and the hour when Yeshua will return. Continuing on here, Pastor says here, and he sends out this man. Okay, he sends out this man. He sends out these orders for the next thing to take place, and he's talking about the Pope sending out this man, the president, to do, or the world leaders to do what they're going to do. And Yahweh even tells you it's going to take place in this generation, and he gives you the same information or more information, saying it's going to take place in the days of this man, in the days of this man. Now he's talking about another man. So which man is he talking about here? Pastor. Okay, it's going to take place in the days of this man. Not after the days of this man, but in the days of this man, these things are going to take place. And now we should be thinking about all of the different scriptures that says it's going to take place in the days of this man. Okay, knowledge increasing, and so on and so forth. My mind's all over the place, so I'm not going to be able to pinpoint all of the different things that's going to take place in the days of this man. The House of Yahweh being established takes place in the days of this man, and so on and so forth. But it says, and then he tells you, well, who is this man? And then he tells you what he's going to be called. So what are some of the names that this man is called? The branch, the seventh Malik, the great white buffalo, Yisrayl, the trumpeter, the seventh Malik, the last day's witness, Micaiah, olive branch, Zerubbabel, the one sent. I mean, the list goes on, right? Okay. Now, these are all of the things that Yahweh said that, we'll know this man. This is what he's going to call him. And there's one more that I want to bring to your attention. And this is where you have to have a little here and a little there. But Pastor teaches of the laws of Yahweh, right? So that makes him what? A teacher, right? It makes him a teacher. And the scripture says, he who teaches these things will be what in the kingdom of Yahweh? Which makes him, or the, come on, man, what is the saying before he's introduced? He's the greatest teacher in the world. Yahweh did this. Yahweh said this. Okay, we didn't make that up. That's scriptural. He's a teacher of Yahweh's law, and he will be called great because he teaches these things. He's the greatest teacher in the world. Praise Yahweh. And this has been given to him by Yahweh. This is one of the many names that Yahweh refers to him. Okay, the greatest teacher in the world. Some of those names I didn't even remember, so I'm glad y'all participated. Praise Yahweh. And I'm sure we didn't cover all of them, but, we should know who he is, right? Once again, if you want references, check the scriptures. Okay, continuing on here, it says, now here's Pastor. He's a very humble man. He says, I'm going to start here at the top. And then he tells you what he's going to be called. Besides a fool and an okie, all kinds of things, right? So Pastor says, he's laughing like, a fool and an okie. But, in our eyes, in the eyes of those who love Pastor, is Pastor a fool? No. Absolutely not. Like Father Yahweh said, this is beloved Yeshurun, beloved Israel. Praise Yahweh. He's our overseer, our greatest teacher in the world. And so continuing on here, it says in verse 45, not after his days, but in his days. In the days of this man, the prophecy said in those days, and Yeshua said, that generation is not going to pass until these things be fulfilled. Boast all you want to, but these are the things that are going to take place. They're written and they're going to be fulfilled. And Yahweh says not one of these are going to fail, not one. Okay, not one. I want to read in Isaiah really quick here. Isaiah, if I can find it. Let me see. Isaiah 43, I think. Let's see. Isaiah 43, because this is some of Father Yahweh's words showing you who Pastor is here. 43, but now this is what, verse 1, chapter 43, verse 1. But now this is what Yahweh says, who created you, O Jacob, and he who formed you, O Yisrayl. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name, you are mine. Let's look at verse 7. Verse 7. Everyone that is called with my name, whom I have created for my glory, I have formed. Yes, I have made them. Bring the blind people who have ears, who have eyes, and the deaf who have ears. Now, this is part of pastor's job right here, okay? Now, this isn't speaking only of those who cannot physically see or who physically cannot hear, but it's talking about those, the blind and deaf, those who can't see or can't hear spiritually, okay? Call them here so that we can gain this eyesight, so that we can gain this understanding, so that we can hear this great knowledge, okay, so that we can be of understanding. So he called us here because we were brought up in the world. We were brought up in the world, and we had no idea of the righteousness of Yahweh until we came to Yahweh's house. And so now we're not blind anymore. Now we're not deaf. And this is because of pastor's teaching. And in verse 9 it says, let all the nations be gathered together, and let the people be assembled. Who among them can declare this and show us former things? Let them bring forth their witnesses so they may be justified, or let them hear and acknowledge this is the truth. You are my witnesses, says Yahweh, and my servants whom I have chosen, so you may know and believe me and understand that I am he. And before me there was no God formed, nor will there ever be after me. I am Yahweh, and besides me there is no Savior. I have declared, and I have saved, and I have showed. And no strange God is among you. Therefore you are my witnesses, says Yahweh, that I am Yahweh. Okay? I am Yahweh. This is what Yahweh says. Yisrael is my witness. Okay? Yisrael is my witness, and he's going to witness to you that I am Yahweh. So who do you believe? Do you believe the lying preachers in the world, or do you believe that Yisrael is the witness of Yahweh, here to bring us to perfection so we could be in Yahweh's house? Praise Yahweh. This is what Yahweh said is going to take place in this day, in this generation. Okay, in the days of this man, these great secrets will be revealed. Okay, it's amazing how fast that clock turns. It is amazing. Okay, time's not up yet. Verse 47, it says that the Pope is also a world leader. Okay, the Pope is a world leader. Now he is a world leader. Well, lo and behold, I told you that back in the Mark of the Beast. How many years ago was that? About 30, 40 years ago? He said that the Pope is a world leader. And I remember in an interview with, who wrote that book? Carl Bernstein, His Holiness. He said that, or is it Bernstein? Carl Bernstein. But he said, if you would have told me that the Pope would have been, I can't remember his exact words, but as powerful as he is, or a world leader, he said, I would have said you were smoking something. He said, this is crazy. Okay, he had no idea that the Pope would have the influence and the authority and the power that he has. Okay, but the scriptures tells us that this man is going to have his authority given to him from what? By the beast, from the beast, and going to reign for a time period. That's in the scriptures. This is what he gave us this information. Okay, only from Yahweh's house. These things are revealed from Yahweh's house. Continuing on here, it says in verse 48, it talks about the army that stands on his part, showing you again the authority that's behind this man. Okay, let's look further down in that verse here. It says, how many people do you see in the world today that are keeping the appointments, the Sabbath appointments that Daniel said in chapter 7? These are going to be done away with by this religious leader that has an army standing on his behalf. Okay, this is where we see the authority of this man changing, things that are in the scriptures. Okay, things that he has no authority to change, things no one has the authority to change. Okay, Yeshua said that if you do these things, your names are going to be taken out of the book of life. Okay? If you add to these things, then the curses are going to be added to you. Okay? Like what? Like changing the food supply. You want to add, always use the rat and the tomato. But if you want to add rat genes to a tomato, guess what? You're going to add the sickness and disease that come with it. And this is what they're doing. They're adding to what Yahweh has created. Okay? They're adding to the things that are necessary for life and turning it into death because of their own understanding. They are blind and deaf. Continuing on here, in verse 49, Pastor's giving us some examples about the book of Yahweh, about the house of Yahweh being established in these last days, talking about the different prophets that talked about it. And he said it's pretty amazing that all of these things are going to take place in the days of this man. All in this time period. And it's easy to look and see. Man, I really have to skip some things. Let's look at verse 54. Okay, verse 54. Because he's talking about the reestablishment of the house of Yahweh that's going to take place in this time period. He said it's called the house of Yahweh. It's established by this messenger in this days of the messenger, or of this messenger. Not before this messenger, not after the messenger is gone. No, but in the days of this messenger, Yahweh said all these secrets are going to be fulfilled, going to be revealed. Secrets. Okay, in the last days, I will establish my house. That's one of the things that Yahweh said. In the last days, I will establish my house. Let's turn over to Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 3. Okay, some great secrets here. Okay, and you're probably like, man, he's about to show us another secret, right? No, you've read these scriptures before. These are not a secret to us. Look at verse 32. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 32. For the froward, those who fall away are an abomination to Yahweh, but his secret, okay, here's the secret. Yahweh's prophesied, established work is with the righteous. Okay? Man, that doesn't sound like a big secret, does it? How many people are here? Not a lot of people. How many people are in the house of Yahweh around the world? Not a whole lot, right? But it's been given to us to understand these things. It's been given to us. So count your blessings that you're one of billions of people in the world, but you are here in Yahweh's house. Okay? You're here in Yahweh's house. Praise Yahweh. Okay? So Yahweh's prophesied established work is with the righteous. Look up to verse 18. She is a tree of life to those who embrace her. Wisdom, and blessed are they that hold fast to her. So she is a tree of life. She. Who is this she? All right? Now, we can easily say that, right? The house of Yahweh is this she he's talking about, right? Yeah, but look at Proverbs chapter 1. You don't have to go far, Proverbs chapter 1, verse 8. My son, listen to the instruction of your father. Who is your father? Father Yahweh, okay? Father Yahweh. And do not forsake the Torah, the teaching of the law of your mother. Who is your mother? The house of Yahweh. Look at the footnotes, G7. It says, that is, of the house of Yahweh, in which the faithful are begotten by the incorruptible seed of Yahweh's word, the law and the prophets. Okay, so she, the house of Yahweh, is your teacher. She's a tree of life to those who embrace her. Okay, this is where we get this wisdom from. And blessed are they that hold fast to her. Look at 1 Corinthians really quick. 1 Corinthians chapter 2. Okay, because this is the wisdom that, it said, hold on to this wisdom from the house of Yahweh, from your mother. Okay, in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 6. However, we speak wisdom among those who are perfect. Okay, what is perfection? Those who keep the laws of Yahweh, right? The laws of Yahweh are perfect, and we're perfect when we keep Yahweh's laws. Right, so we speak wisdom among those who keep Yahweh's laws. Yet not the wisdom of this world, nor of the princes of this world who come to nothing. Okay, just like the jobs, they come to nothing, okay, except the jobs that come from Yahweh. But we speak the wisdom of Yahweh in a secret. Oh, here's that secret again. Okay, Yahweh in a secret. That is the knowledge of Yahweh's plan previously hidden. Right, it's hidden until when? What's the title of this sermon? In the days, in the days of this messenger, all the secrets of Yahweh will be revealed. So they were previously hidden, but they're being revealed to us right now in these last days, in the days of this messenger, which Yahweh ordained before the world, before our glory, for our glory. Okay, so this was done before we were even born. Yahweh set these things up for our glory, to have this great teacher, the greatest teacher teaching us so that we can be a part of this administration. Okay, praise Yahweh. And it says here, look at what it says in verse 8, which none of the rulers of this age understood, for had they known, they would not have killed the King of glory. Okay, if they had known this great secret of Yahweh, the great plan of Yahweh, they wouldn't have killed Yeshua. You know what else they wouldn't have done, these rulers of this world? They wouldn't have arrested Pastor and placed a $10 million bill on him either, if they had known Yahweh's great plan. Okay, so can you see how blessed you are? You know, you have to see how blessed you are to be able to understand these teachings, because everyone else is calling for the death of those who keep Yahweh's laws. Okay, calling for the death. But here we're learning to rejoice and even forgive those who don't even understand. You know, showing mercy and compassion for those who hate Yahweh. Okay, this is the example of Yeshua, our Messiah. You know, love your enemies. Do we repay evil with evil? Absolutely not. You know, but righteousness. We get ourselves ready to become teachers so that we can be a blessing to them, because they don't know. They don't know right now, but they will one day, and they're going to be so thankful that we endured the persecution, we endured the lies, the slandering, and we've trained to become teachers of righteousness. They're going to thank us. You know, not that we actually want them to thank us, but they are. Just like we're thankful to Pastor. Okay? We're thankful. Here in verse 61, it talks about the confusion that's going on right now in the people's minds because of the things that they're doing. And he mentions Leviticus 18 here. Okay, Leviticus 18. Okay, the unlawful relationships. Okay, you can add to that Leviticus chapter 11. You know, the unlawful food. You know, all of these things that cause people to do silly things like commit suicide. Okay, jumping off of buildings, stepping in front of trains, you know, shooting themselves. All of the different things that they do. Pastor goes on and talks about the tentacles of this octopus, or the tentacles of the Catholic Church, the money that spreads out and it corrupts people. People take these bribes and they have this ability to move things in their direction the way that they see fit. Okay, it's this money. You know, they have this vast amount of money to get things done the way that they want to get things done. Okay, but in the house of Yahweh, are we being trained to take money so that we can be swayed to make decisions? Absolutely not. Okay, the scriptures teach us not to pervert justice. Okay, not to pervert justice, but to make sure that everyone's rights are protected. Okay, in righteousness. And I'm not talking about the Bill of Rights or the Constitution or any of these things. Okay, these are the laws of man. But the laws that are in Yahweh and in the Holy Scripture, the laws that Yahweh has given us. Okay, making sure that everyone is taken care of all the time, not just once or twice a year. Okay, not just once or twice a year, because right now this is, like the lady said, this is the season of giving and taking. Okay, giving and taking. And I heard on the radio today, and this was crazy to me. This guy, they were talking about people that follow like delivery trucks to steal packages off people's porches. Okay. Oh, but guess what? It gets better, because you know what people are doing now? They're leaving packages on their porch on purpose with things like dead squirrels. No, I'm not joking. I heard this on the radio today, and I was like, wow. They said, this one guy said, yeah, I left a broken Xbox on there with a GPS tracking system so I could find out who's stealing my things. Okay, and then another person said, yeah, I leave dog poop in the box, surprise. This is what they're doing. This is their retaliation. Don't teach people to make right choices, not to steal. And like the Kahan said, get rid of this whole gift-giving thing altogether. Get rid of the trees. No, I'm leaving you a special gift. I'm leaving you a special gift. Merry Christmas. This is the foolishness of this world. Let's continue on here. I'm pretty much out of time, but I want to read this last part because Pastor really encourages us here in verse 68 and 69. He says, he's talking about the Pope here. He says that the Pope is not popular. He's not popular among the people, but he gained his power by force. And then he refers to Daniel. And let me just read it. It all started in Israel when they became the leaders of Israel, and they had one king who became a great king. And Daniel said, "You're a great king. You have a great power, and all of this is going to be given to you. And wherever there's life on earth, you're going to be known there. So you're going to be great. But you're all going to fall, and your governments are going to fall. And who are they going to be given to? The the saints of Yahweh, okay? Pastor says here, a bunch of Okies. And then he says, yeah, praise Yahweh. He says, and he's talking about these Okies here, talking about all of us. He says, these Okies who knew they had to depend on Yahweh, who loved the thought of depending on Yahweh, who loved the thought of Yahweh being their leader. He says, you know, the great wisdom that this being has, I would keep tagging along. I would tag along with him forever to get the crumbs that fell from the table, okay? The drops that fall from his lips, the wisdom that comes from Yahweh's mouth, his eyes, and he calls me clothed with the sun. And he keeps going on about this here, okay? He says, I would tag along, you know, forever to get this great wisdom. I would get these things from the scraps that fall from the table. But you know what Yahweh says, though? He says, if we qualify, do we have to get the scraps that fall from the table? No. We can be invited to the supper and dine with him, okay? We can dine with Father Yahweh if we qualify. And this is something that we can look forward to. Okay, I was talking to one of Yahweh's great deacons, I think it was last night, you know, and we were discussing how sometimes, you know, it's extremely difficult to look past right now, look past today, okay? But we have to. Okay, we have to look past today because today is filled with, like Yeshua said, with its own words, with its own troubles. Okay, but Yahweh said that in the kingdom, he's going to wipe away what? All tears. So we have to look forward towards that day and endure these things and rejoice knowing what Yahweh has in store. Okay, but guess what? You don't know everything Yahweh has in store. You can't even imagine it. He says you can't imagine it. But what you can imagine should bring you great joy. May Yahweh bless your understanding.